everybody, this is John for mtgotavern, coming back at you with a burn video after some time off. As a friendly reminder, if you do like red-based content, please consider subscribing to the channel, as we'll get back into that here shortly. But I will be kind of continuing the hiatus, but I did want to do a burn video while there was the Mana Traders qualifying series going on. Still trying to figure out the finer details of what the channel is going to look like. I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to be doing, but I digress. You're here for the burn, not for my BS right now. This was a version I believe was recently 5.0'd by qbturtle. I have seen them play a bunch of different decks. They play burn from time to time. This one caught my eye because I jokingly call it cat burn, but you have Lurrus of the Dream Den as well as 4 copies of Wild Nacatl. So it's basically Wild Nacatl skewed to cast Lurrus of the Dream Den, and then you're playing all the greatest hits. You're playing Targus Command, you're playing Boros Charm, you're playing Lightning Helix. This is basically a deck almost straight out of 2017, 2016. One notable exception is there is one copy of Sunbaked Canyon. One of the weaknesses of the Nacatl decks previously was the fact of the mana base is very intensive. There isn't a lot of room for, things like Inspiring Vantage and such, especially when you're trying to get the requirements for Wild Nacatl going. So one thing I do like, but also dislike in this version that caught my eye, was the copy of Temple Garden. This does kind of fix your mana as far as casting like Wild Nacatl and all of these various Targus Command, Boros Charm, Lightning Helix. It does come up a little bit awkward in some spots where you're trying to double red spell on like turn 2 especially. So not a perfect card, especially to have in your opening hand, but it does fix the mana requirements. Like you can get like Temple Garden with a fetch land and have a basic mountain, and your mana is mainly functional other than Eidolon. So that part was interesting. 3 Sacred Foundries, 2 Stomping Grounds, you have 1 Temple Garden, you have a bunch of fetches and shocks. This is kind of the old school burn mana base. Now, a couple problems with it. Number one, it's very painful. You're going to be starting a lot of games at 15 life, which is kind of relevant in a format with Scourge of the Skyclaves especially. But it does give you the ability to play another very powerful 1-drop. Beyond that, nothing too fancy in the main deck. We're not playing any Skewer the Critics or any of the more recent cards. Targus Command takes the place of something like Skullcrack. No Searing Blazes in the main. Just playing 4 of all the good stuff, pretty much. Sideboard, really can't argue the finer details. 2 cages, a little bit awkward with Lurrus of the Dream Den, but it does allow you to have an early hate card against something like Oops All Spells. Also pretty good against the Collected Company decks. A lot of utility where cage is pretty reasonable. Stops any type of graveyard recursion like Uro and such. 2 copies of Rav Trap. This could easily be Surgical Extraction. The one thing I would be concerned about with Surgical Extraction in this particular build is the fact that the mana base is already so painful. So you're already starting a lot of games at like 15, 16 life, and that's even before you play Eidolon. Beyond that, a couple copies of Molten Rain. Well, this does further the burn game plan. I do think Cleansing Wildfire might be a better slowing down Tron decks and such, as well as cantripping. I'd have to play more with like a list like this with like Molten Rain or Cleansing Wildfire to determine which one's better. Like obviously, it's kind of like the debate between Wear Tyrant and something like Smash to Smithereens. And is the utility more reasonable than the damage? Kind of hard to say in a deck like Burn where you're trying to like pile on damage. 3 copies of Searing Blaze on the sideboard, pretty decent for any type of smaller creature decks. Also 3 copies of Path to Exile, pretty much don't leave home without it against any type of burn deck. There are creatures that you just can't deal with otherwise. If you don't have something like Path to Exile or Fatal Push, you can't beat Tarmogoyf, you can't beat the Shadows, Scourge of the Skyclaves. On and on and on. Thought-Knot Seers, Reality Smashers. There's a bunch of stuff in the format that you just have real problems dealing with unless you have something like Path to Exile. Finally, obviously you have Lurrus. Allows you to replay your creatures. There are no like Seal of Fire packages or any of this in this deck. And finally, 2 copies of Destructive Revelry to give you some outs to things like Chalice of the Void, Leyline, etc. So, getting back into the future of the channel, I'm still on a break. It should be coming to an end relatively shortly. I've got some stuff that I'm currently working on that I want to get done before I get back into a higher gear of content creation. Once again, I have a pretty good idea what I'm going to do, but I'm going to keep it under wraps until I start doing it. But let's get into some matches, shall we? We're back for match number 1 with Nacatl Burn here in the Man Traders series. Taking us a while to get paired. Our opponent taking their kind of sweet time connecting. So this could be a bit of a bumpy ride. This hand's fine. Got a couple creatures. Pretty decent mana. One thing interesting about this build is the Temple Garden. I'm kind of in favor of it, actually. It's going to be a little bit awkward with our sequencing here. Just because we need a bunch of red spells. So like I said, it's going to be a little bit awkward, but I do think we do run Nacatl out there. See if our opponent has a Fatal Push or something. Could very well be on Sultai. Nope. Esper of some type. Okay. So, Emery, sure. So we could take the turn to kill Emery, which I think we're going to do against the whatchamacallit deck here. We have a Spell Pierce or something done. Repeal. Sure. Don't really know that does a whole lot other than lets them cycle. 15. Another Emery. Yep. There's a whole lot of milling and chilling there, but get that to conserve our life total a little bit. Play Goblin Guide. Swing in here. Play with a Thought Scour. Choose not to block. We just go ahead and kill their Emery because their deck probably sucks without it. And they scoop it up. Alright, so we saw Monastery Mentor. Nonsense. Probably want this. Did they show us a... I'm not really sure if we actually want Cage or not. That's another consideration. Searing Blaze seems perfectly reasonable. Some number of paths might be against the Monastery Mentor, etc. deck. Targa's Command could be a come out. Boros Charm could be a come out here. Probably want to leave in Eidolon against the deck that's trying to play a bunch of spells and do things. So how much graveyard heat are we actually interested in? Cage is a little subpar against EE specifically, especially since they're going to want to set it on 1 against our 1-drop deck anyway. Command and Charm both have utility in these kind of decks. Like Charm is decent against EE, etc. Targa's Command is good against any type of life game plan. Could be in for cutting a couple Lava Spikes, so kind of doing a bit of a coward split here. Take a look at how the mana shapes up. Shiva Blaze. They're up against some type of monster mentor Emery shenanigans. This hand seems okay. It's not great against turn 1 Emery or whatever, but it's fine enough for what we're trying to do. Opponent's mulliganing pretty hard. One of the things Burn still does particularly well, even when it's not well positioned in a meta, is it does do a pretty decent job of punishing opponents mulliganing to oblivion, so that's one thing Burn is still pretty consistently good at, is punishing opponents for doing target themselves or target us? They target themselves. Okay, they have a fetch land, sure. Interesting. Guess I lead on Sacred Foundry here. Like, damage can potentially be relevant here. With a Moxie Ember, which they're going to be kind of incentivized to play out, I think. Opponent could get got here. Oh, they're going to fetch away Moxie Ember anyway. Okay. Are you just playing some type of 4-color Keithas nonsense? I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I guess I shouldn't even have played the land necessarily. Okay, so they have a Fatal Push. Gonna run this Eidolon into a known Ether Gust. Doesn't particularly matter. I'm honestly kind of dumbfounded that they dealt with whatchamacallit, how they did. I'm just going to go into attack. I feel like they're just going to push this. It's kind of dumb, once again. People playing push. We have another Ether Gust. Yep. Kind of sequenced poorly here myself. And concession incoming. Nope. Not quite a concession, but may as well be. Drawing a shock land. Just playing the land out. We have lethal on board. ahead and helix them. Even if they have negation, they're dead. Alright, nice to get off on the winning foot. Alright, we're back for match number 2 here. Let's run the draw. This hand's just a mulligan. This hand's much more keepable. Put back the uncastable card. Okay, so mill perhaps. Yep. Confirmed mill. We obviously draw like the one card in our deck we don't really want to see. See if they block. It'd be funny as heck if we were playing like prowess or something and could punish them for that. Yep, opponent's got crabs. Get the mills for 12, which is kind of obnoxious. This is one of Mill's few starts where they could actually beat us. In game 1, which would kind of be annoying. Just play Eidolon here. Doesn't get through theoretically as much damage, but problem with is Alluro, they could just continuously replay. Oh, okay, just have another mill 6. Okay. You know, a lot of people question whenever I say I think Seal of Fire is a mandatory card in Burn anymore. But, like, you know, just things like this where, you know, you're just kind of like floundering around a little bit. You don't really have a lot of answers to turn 1 crab. You know, we're just going to die 2 mill here, game number 1. Third crab? Yeah. I'm gonna say they're thinking of like surgicaling something here. I almost think they should chump block here. Alright, or not. That's cool. 4th crab? Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's... Moving on. That's another, like, 12 mil plus stuff. Snaring Bridge is a thing. Cryptic whatever incursion's a thing. Searing Blaze is like potentially okay against them. D-Rev's like reasonable in some instances against them with like both Mesmeric Orb and Bridge being a thing. Path of Exile is a consideration against some some configurations of what they do. Path to Exile against what? 4. We saw Hedron Crab. We didn't see Ruin Crab, but we can figure that's probably somewhere in the mix. Boros Charm could certainly be an out here. We definitely want to leave in Autarka's Command because of Crypt Incursion, and whatchamacallits, could also potentially leave in Boros Charm, but I do think we're getting a little too dangerous there. Or not one of these guys. Go like that. Alright, so got a bit of an awkward hand, but I still think we keep it awkward because we don't have access to our third color. It is nice that we don't have fetch land necessarily to trigger something like Archive Trap. One of the weaknesses of like this version is we are low on ways to answer, or ways to, yeah. One of the things with like Blood Chief's Thirst is they just have a lot more cards that kind of matter in terms of interaction for burn. So like the creature heavier burn that we're on is actually a little bit weaker against mill than traditional burn, because they have Blood Chief's Thirst and Fatal Push now. But one of the things like this version of the deck, so we're gonna have to waste a whatchamacallit on this. Lost a Sacred Foundry, which I think is somewhat relevant. Kind of cuts down on their clock. I'm not going to use that unless we absolutely have to. Put out with another crab with a Fatal Push. It's going to do the thing. I'm not going to crack this fetch once again unless we absolutely have to. The way our opponent's not passing priority kind of leads me to believe that they have Archive Trap. So, it's kind of whatever. I hate doing this because this turns on Archive Trap, but I just can't risk running out of. I'm already dangerously close to running out of white sources here, so now we're gonna get Archive Trap and hate our lives, but it is what it is. Yep, no Archive Trap. Interesting. So now, do I take down? Oh, there's the. Speak of the devil, and it's a turn too late. I'm going to take down life gain for a turn, get this Eidolon out. If they have incursion, they have incursion. It's kind of whatever at this point. They're smart, they just main phase it here. No other cards in hands, a Archive Trap. Beyond that, we really don't have too much working knowledge of what they have going on. Okay. So how many cards are they drawing? Oh, they're drawing the full discount. Okay. A little bit awkward, but, you know, say levy. Sure. Probably gonna have to hard cast Archive Trap here, which does make my not playing Nacatl a little bit awkward with our green mana situation. Okay, so we know that's a thing. Wow. Why wouldn't you just fetch a basic there? That makes absolutely no sense to me. So I know their deck has, they have both Archive Trap and a Lurrus in hand. I think I am going to go ahead and fire off, whatchamacallit here. If they have it, they have it. It's whatever. Yep. Must have drawn it off of the, whatchamacallit. That was a gamble there on my part. Maybe I wasn't supposed to do that. Maybe I was just supposed to wait and hope to draw a spell. But I think the game of chicken was going to favor them, unfortunately, with the way things were going. So, because we need to draw a spell, and then, you know, they have access to, you know, the crab, so they're just going to mill us pretty quickly anyway. So, maybe I got a little impatient there, but, you know, losing game one is kind of unfortunate to mill to begin with. So, anyways, on to the next match. Okay, we're back for match number 3 here against Spider Space, which is a name I recognize, but I can't remember why. Lurrus versus Lurrus. I think this is a mulligan with 4 landers here and only 1 cantrip land. So this hand is perfectly reasonable. Putting back basic mountain, I guess. Put back basic mountain here. Opponent is, looks like on Bogles, perhaps. Oop. Turn 1, give her overruns. Okay. So we're gonna fetch Stomping Ground here and play Nacatl, pass the turn. Looks like we're, I don't know what we're up against. Devoted Druid? Oh, hammer time. Okay, well, I think we're danger, Will Robinson, but stop. Hammer time. Guess we technically didn't have to play whatchamacallit there. Now they can block and whatever, which is kind of obnoxious. Yeah, they just get to block for free here. So I should have held up the mana, and then we might just like be basically dead to hammer here. All right, yep, and they just get to attach it, which is kind of dumb. All right, so we're dead on turn 3. Sweet. All right. Anywho, Path to Exile, sure. Searing Blaze is probably reasonable. D-Row is probably reasonable. Could bring in Molten Rains to fight whatchamacallit, Nexus, but I think that's just a little too slow and clunky. Board those out, and I think we're good. Yeah. At least it's a fast match, right? One way or the other. Stop. Hammer time. Yep, hand has interaction, early pressure, kind of all the things we want. And 5. So probably go turn 1 Nacatl, turn 2 Goblin Guide Lava Spike, or Goblin Guide Path Exile, depending on the situation. But that's another thing that's been kind of really weird for Burn, is a lot of these like weird decks used to be pretty reasonable matchups for Burn, and now I think they're like even at best. Like Heliod Company, Hammer Time, you know, just a lot of decks that just like so much more efficient than Burn, like even more efficient than Burn, which is kind of a dumb thing to say, but like, yeah, like Mill, generally a matchup we probably should have won. I'm sure if I go back and watch, there's probably some play mistakes. Sigarda's Aid, huh? Sure. That's kind of obnoxious, but also kind of whatever. Alright, so with that going on, we just play this, hold up Path Exile. Not sure that it particularly matters, but we have a relatively fast clock here. That's a bit nicer. So now we just continue to pressure our opponent here. Steel Shaper's Gift, sure. Okay. Mortar Pod. Okay. Don't think that worked out as intended. Just hazarding a guess. Continue to hold up multiple Path Exiles here. Basically have to play like a tempo deck here. Yeah, don't particularly care about Stoneforge. Okay. You have a third land? You do not. I'm going to just go for double path and just deal with their crap. Let's go for the kill while we can. Alright, once again, don't really feel like much changes on the draw. We do have random things like swords that can get us 2. So, what did they actually go get with? Reveals Colossal Hammer. Alright. 1, 2, I mean, this hand's okay. It's not like super exciting. We have no 1 mana interaction in the form of Path or Bolt, which could kill us, but still think we keep this hand. Turn 1, Sigarda's Aid, kind of obnoxious. So that means our we're vulnerable to getting hit by just like random equipment. So guard is aid, kind of useless to them, at least the second one is. Now we have the really awkward game of I can only really play this. Coming. But I gotta end this match anyway, so. Alright, we're back for match number 4 here. A little bit of a premature ending to match number 3. It was dinner time, so I had to go. That would have been a tough game to win, likely anyway. See if we can send the fans home with a win, shall we?
Did you take your bath?
Not yet.
Computer done, will you?
Definitely a keep. We're getting to 6. Interesting. Alright. Our opponent has a removal spell, they have a removal spell, it's kind of whatever. Could be Jund or Burn potentially. They do not, or they just don't want to take the damage to do the thing. Still could be Jund. I think Jund's most likely what my money's on here. Like the old fetch shock, fetch shock. Nothing. It's like a skelemental deck. Cute. Not getting too cute, getting punished. Weird hand for the... No reason to attack, our opponent's just dead next turn. Once again, opponent with terrible timing with their stuff. Once again, against the Boros Charm deck, main phase, main phase, main phase. Wait for that to resolve, and then just bolt you because there's nothing you can have here that I'm supposed to play around. Probably want cages. This is probably alright in this matchup. Path Exile is probably fine. Boros Charm's kind of garbo. It was kind of useful in the removal heavy hands our opponent had. Possibly Nacatl on the draw. I'm going to remove the Nacatl on the draw. I'd rather have a Tarka's Command in against any type of collective brutality, etc. shenanigans. Hand's fine. Painful, but fine. Okay, opponent will have a kill spell for it next turn at the very least. You know, that awkward, I gotta keep this hand and I don't wanna. Pass turn. Like we could have pathed that, we could have bolted that. There's a number of things we could have done. Triggers. Sure. Mm-hmm. Hold open path here in case they have. A few too many lands. Hmm. Not sure even on the play we particularly want the Nacatls in. Guess I should have been putting Lurrus in my hand. That's certainly a thing I could have done. Lots of small rest mistakes here, these several matches. Sounds fine. Touch awkward with the Temple Garden. Trigger land. Okay. Again, Temple Garden a little bit awkward in this hand. Unearth, we can turn that little cycling blank pretty much. Sure, bolt, whatever. What am I pitching here? Eidolon. Once again, that Temple Garden, a little bit awkward. Yep. Pretty sure we're dead here unless we draw path, and hoping our opponent doesn't have anything else relevant. Sure. So we're just at the like perfect late total where we're dead. Perfect card, but kind of useless against Megas of the Moon. Alright, be back in a bit with the wrap up. Hey everybody, we're back for the wrap up after playing some matches with Nacatl Burn here in the Mana Traders series. Some of it is a little bit of play rust. I'm not gonna lie, there were some decision points, like against what was likely a known Crypt Incursion, against Mill, and then the concession to Hammer Time Game 3 was due to it being time for dinner. So, you know, some things led to some losses that maybe wouldn't have happened, but overall, I think the thing's still the same. You know, there's a lot of decks that really put pressure on Burn in weird angles, and Burn really needs to play almost a perfect game in a lot of these games to win matches. And, you know, little things like flooding out or, you know, maybe getting a little bit too aggressive. You know, didn't used to punish Burn quite as much. You know, there were a lot of like mid-range decks like Jund or whatever, or, you know, decks like Storm and such that were pretty reasonable matchups for Burn. And a lot of them have been replaced by decks like Green-White Heliod, decks like Hammer Time, decks like, you know, Oops All Spells, Belcher. You know, a lot of decks that put pressure on Burn to, ironically, somehow be the control deck and the aggressive deck at the same time. Like, you have to defend against this, like, absurd thing from happening, while at the same time applying enough pressure to get the game over. Or you have to, you know, gauge, you know, is it time for my opponent to play an Uro, or are they just holding up like an Archmage's Charm or something? You know, you kind of have to plan a lot of these games a turn or two in advance and decide what you want to play around and what you don't. And I think that makes Burn a little bit more skill dependent than it used to be. Like, there used to be a lot of games with Burn where you could just, like, zerg and win, and it really doesn't matter between someone their first or second day piloting the deck and someone with years of experience, you know, making perfect plays. They're really, like, there was, like, a 5 or 10%, you know, swing in win rates, and now it's almost like the way the modern format is constructed, if you don't, like, both play almost a perfect game and draw well, you're going to do poorly. And, you know, that's really kind of an interesting place for Modern to be. You know, obviously this isn't your traditional Burn. We don't have the flood insurance of a bunch of, you know, the canopy lands like Sunbaked Canyon or Fiery Islet. You know, we're a little bit stretching our mana base. So this might be like a subpar version of Burn, obviously. But it does have, you know, the power of Wild Nacatl not to be underestimated, but I think we saw in a lot of these matchups that Nacatl either gets invalidated very quickly, or there's just so much extra one-mana removal, whether it be Bloodchief's Ascension, Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, Path to Exile. There's just so many more efficient ways to answer something like a Nacatl without haste than there used to be. You know, there's more creatures that brawl with it favorably. Scourge of the Sky, Claves, you know, or things like Seasoned Pyromancer that just gum up the board, or, you know, there's just so many things that make the card almost irrelevant unless you have it exactly on turn 1 and you're on the play. There's a good chance Nacatl just isn't getting in for damage, which is unfortunate for a card that was once considered too powerful for the modern format. But once again, getting back to the content thing, it's probably going to be another little bit before I get back into regular content, but I did want to make this video. You know, I have a day off here, and I just wanted to play some Magic a little bit, get a feel for the modern format without playing money in the Wizard slot machine. As many of you may know, Mana Traders has a monthly series where you have to qualify To me, I usually use it as more of a testing thing for either decks that I've never played before, or just an excuse to play free Magic and not have to put money into the Wizard slot machine when the archetype you happen to love isn't doing particularly well. I'm not saying Burn's not playable. I'm just simply saying it still doesn't feel particularly well positioned. Now, that was a small sample size, but Burn is not well represented in the meta right now, to put it nicely. So, anywho, this has been John for MTG Nexus. I'll see you guys in the next video, hopefully, and won't be quite as long a break as I've currently had before the next video comes out, but you'll see me around. Hopefully you'll be excited when the new content starts coming out and you see the format that it takes, but gonna keep that under wraps for now. This has been John for MTG Nexus.